Afternoon, everybody. So, I had a thought. When you catch yourself midstream in a thought and you stop what you were doing in the moment, and you have the realization that you are starting to look at things differently, and that the way you would have looked at a similar circumstance a year ago, 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago would have been totally different. And you realize that the slow, consistent change in perception and awareness that you had and you chose to walk with and work with within yourself has changed how you see things. That is a moment where you should be thankful that you have changed, that you made the choice to change, because you're no longer falling back into old narratives about yourself and old patterns and behaviors. And it wasn't overnight that you changed. It was through consistent daily choice to show up differently in your life, to be differently, and to really evaluate how you show up for yourself in life and show up in the dynamics that you are a part of in life, whether that's in your relationship, at your home, in your family, at work, or just in your daily going about your life at the gas station, running errands in the grocery store, when you're confronted with, just different dynamics of situations. And when you can recognize in midstream of a thought, not an action, but a thought, that you have changed not only the way that you perceive circumstances and people and their dynamics, but you have changed the way that you respond to that. That is a huge shift within yourself that has transformed you in hopefully a better way to being more open-minded to just not seeing your perspective but the perspective of other people, and being willing for a moment to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and see how they would come to the conclusions that they do, how they view life differently than you. And it doesn't make the way that they view it right and the way that you view it wrong, but it's just it's a neutral state that you can understand and conceptualize that two people can be right at the same time and also yet still miss the point of the dynamic and the issue at hand. And so, thinking about that, I had a moment with a coworker where they relayed information to me, and as I'm hearing what they're saying, I am realizing that what I once would have responded to is simply not important to me anymore. And when I caught that in mid thought, caught that realization, I was so happy that I began smiling, and my coworker who had been talking looked at me and said, "What are you smiling about?" And my best possible way to keep it simple, I explained it to him, and then he just looked at me and he said, "So you realize the thought processes that you have are changing, and you're aware of it, and you're seeing it. And I said, yes, and having that person confirm that other people are seeing me do this at the same time is a really interesting dynamic, because so often we're so isolated within ourselves that we don't really think people see when we're going through different thought processes and, catching ourselves before we do things that, we don't want to do, and seeing a bigger picture in events unfolding rather than just our narrow little perception of everything, and that need to be right rather than setting aside that and becoming neutral and observing not just our own perspective but other people's perspectives in situations, because so often that is what would inherently keep you out of situations that are really high density drama, at work, at home, in the grocery store, in traffic, just all throughout life. And being able to sit back and just become observant and not necessarily need to respond to everything that's said or everything that you hear or everything that you're told or is relayed to you, even about yourself. That is a wonderful capacity and skill set to have, because it means that you can interact with people in a multitude of ways without necessarily needing to prove that they're right or they're wrong, or have a preconceived assumption or even an educated guess on how they're going to react. And you just let them show you who they would rather be, or let them introduce you to who they are. And, from there, obviously, you use your discernment to know or make a judgment call of if that's a good investment for you, time-wise, as a friend, or, what have you. And so as I thought about that, all of that, I thought how interesting it is that as isolated as human beings can be, we are still very connected to each other, and we do pick up and see things, and we don't always speak on it. But when we have an opportunity to, I believe that it's beneficial where it's necessary and needed to share, positive things that you see about people, because oftentimes you don't know the burdens that somebody else is carrying in their soul, and it could be something as simple as you're doing a good job that keeps them from spiraling into a depressive episode, or even a self-harming episode, which, depression is very closely linked with that, can be, it doesn't have to be. But just being there to hold space for other people, even if you never communicate that to them, doing what you can in a quiet and unobtrusive way that allows them to not feel like you are trying to weaponize their internal struggle against them is such a beautiful thing to do and experience and be a part of, because not only does it help that person, but it also broadens your perspective to just understand how diverse, you know, humanity can be, and complex it is at the core of things. Because what doesn't affect one person will affect another person, and two people can grow up in the same household, but they don't grow up in the same household because the parents interact with them differently, because they're two different children. And realizing that and taking that to heart is a gift that you can build on and give to other people. And so I'm going to end it here at 11 11 and a half minutes almost. And whenever this posts and uploads, I hope this finds you in uplifted spirits. And if it doesn't, I hope it gives you encouragement and inspiration to do something for yourself. Maybe sit down and, enjoy a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. Maybe even journal, or get outside and get some, sunlight, and sit on the grass and just be in a space where you feel comfortable and you feel connected to yourself and connected to what is around you. And if you need to cry, then just cry and release whatever you need to release, and know that as you do that, you are loved and you are held in God's hands. All right. I will see you on the next video.